Hello and welcome to the 313 Connect podcast, all about the Detroit Pistons. And if you noticed it, there's not a Brennan Sims in sight. He is MIA. Just Sean Murphy, who I am very jealous of, was able to go to Game 6 yesterday and able to just do a lot of shit that I wish I could be able to do. So, Sean, how was your experience last night?
Yeah, man, it was one of the craziest 24 hours of my life. I mean, obviously the game was incredible and the atmosphere was insane. Everyone saw, the outcome and how everything went, but just some of the things that you just get to, get to see, or the people that you get to interact with. It was really cool. Got to interact a little bit with Jim Costa from 97.1, who's a really nice guy. Did a show out in West Michigan before he came out to Detroit. So shout out to him. That was a lot of fun. On top of that, we also were able, when I was walking out for pregame warmups, I ran into Patrick Ewing, which was pretty crazy. And then if you haven't seen my YouTube channel yet, I did actually record a video after the game going over some of the stuff that went down and also what is to come, and got to actually do it right in the arena, which was awesome. And then, Ben Stiller, for whatever reason, followed me on Twitter, which was not on my 2025 bingo card. If it was on yours, I would like you to show your card to the class because I don't believe you.
Yeah, he probably watched the last episode of 313 Connect, where we talked about you watching him in the tunnel.
It is now a canon event. Ben Stiller, known supporter of 313 Connect.
Yeah, oh man, maybe we can get on Severance. Just be some background characters.
You know what? That is the first step, is he watches your podcast. And then right after that, you get the message saying, hey, I think I have a role for you.
Yeah, Sean, check your inbox.
Would you like to be Jebediah Severance? Oh boy, would I?
Okay, Sean, enough of this. I don't even know if anybody's even in here right now, man. They're probably like, should I click off yet?
Joke around on this show. Be careful what you itch for, Leggy. You said you wanted the humor. Well, you got it.
Well, Sean, we're gonna get to the analytical basketball talk. Let's move on to Pistons. Bobby Marks.
Let's reel it in, Sean.
No, I'm just messing with. I'm just busting your balls. And I'm, just the classic. Anyways, Sean, you brought up a really good point talking about Bobby Marks and what he does for the NBA, especially after they're eliminated, that the teams are eliminated. So what kind of are we looking at here? I mean, it's the 25 outlook. What are we looking at?
Yeah, so Bobby Marks came through with his off-season guide for the Detroit Pistons. He does this for all 30 teams throughout the league, but for the playoff teams, he does it right as they're getting eliminated. And as he points out, as some things to watch, for this team are, to be able to take a step, to not take a step back, but also not skipping the steps to continue to build the roster. He also talks about the extensions that Detroit has looming in Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey. He points out the veterans that we have that will be hitting free agency, which is Dennis Schroeder, Malik Beasley, and Tim Hardaway Jr. And then he talks about the resources we have, which is we now have 4 tradable first-round picks after the first-round pick conveyed this year. Funny enough, conveyed to the New York Knicks. So they beat us in a playoff series. Oh, actually, I believe it's now owned by the Timberwolves. Yeah. So even though it used to be the Knicks, but I digress. So we now have 4 picks to trade. On top of that, we have financial flexibility. So we have $28 million in cap space this summer, but that is also before considering the people that we're more than likely going to be re-signing, like a Malik Beasley, most definitely. And then I would think that Detroit would want to probably bring back Dennis Schroeder as well, and perhaps even Tim Hardaway Jr., who I know people are kind of critical on some of these guys after how the playoffs went, but I personally think all 3 of those guys have played really well, and I think you can make legitimate arguments that they should be in a Pistons uniform going into next season. So I think that's the most interesting question, and perhaps the biggest storyline going into next season for Detroit is you just had a season that you couldn't have imagined beyond your wildest expectations. How does that accelerate or change the plan that you laid out at the beginning? And should it change it? Because even though like this success has been remarkable, if anything, shouldn't that give you reason to be patient, to watch this play out, to see who becomes available? Because as we've seen, you never know who could be available. Nick Wright actually pointed this out on Kevin O'Connor's show yesterday. He said if the Mavericks waited just 3 or 4 months, they probably could have traded Luka for Giannis.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So if you're the Pistons, where you have historically been plagued by your bad roster decisions and your eagerness and desperation to try and plug whatever holes you have, what's the incentive for this group to go out and rush to build a contender when Cade Cunningham's not even 24 years old yet?
Yeah, the biggest thing that Trajan Langdon has spoke about is maintaining some sort of flexibility. And I think if you're looking at what Bobby Marks put, you don't want to take a step back, but you don't want to skip steps, how much continuity factors in, and financial flexibility. Those are the 3 big points that I kind of look at, and they kind of go hand in hand. How can you find a way to remain flexible while also being able to move forward while keeping some sort of continuity? Because I'm just going to say, I think the veteran leadership is what really put this season on the map for Detroit. Because last year, it was a lot of the same young guys with the not so great veteran cast where people said, well, they're veterans, but they weren't the veterans that we have now. So if you get rid of them and then you upgrade to one big star, you're going to be lacking something at the end of the day.
You can't underestimate or you can't underrate the importance of maintaining your culture.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that you look at like a Malik Beasley, like he played all 82 games and had one of the greatest shooting seasons. Not just, I mean, he already shattered the best shooting season in Pistons history. We are now talking about one of the greatest shooting seasons in NBA history. But after a difficult playoff series, what does those extension conversations look like? To me, it's almost kind of like a Sam Darnold conversation where it's like, you know, he put on such good tape throughout like the vast majority of the regular season, and then the wheels kind of fell off at the end, right? It's kind of a similar thing. I think he's still going to get paid. I just wonder how that affects those conversations. Malik did, though, in that press conference afterward, make it very clear that he wants to be in Detroit.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time seeing him leaving.
Yeah, and Brennan and I talked about this similarly in last night's live. If you didn't check that one out, make sure you hit that one up. I'll try to put it in the description after this recording, after this live stream. But when you're talking about Malik Beasley, what he provided for this team was so valuable because, yes, it didn't contribute and translate to the playoffs, but what it did for our regular season, putting us in the position to even be in the playoffs. So if you think, oh, we can't afford to pay him because of what he did in the playoffs, because next year in the playoffs, we can't use that kind of skill set. We can't use a one-dimensional shooter. But you have to get there somehow. And maybe it's you get him back and he maybe doesn't have that big of a role and you fill in someone to take that maybe, I don't know, Jaden Ivey or something like that, or give Dennis Schroeder another contract and kind of have him fill more of a role. But with Beasley, when he is hot, he's one of the, if not the best shooter in the league on any given day.
He was Klay Thompson as a 3-point shooter this season. Like he was prime Klay, and he had those moments where he would be a microwave like Klay, right? I think the thing that was lacking was that playoff performance. I think some of that was how he was being guarded. I think some of it was, just from an execution standpoint, just missing shots. We know that shooters tend to not shoot as well come playoff time. So that's not entirely surprising in that respect. But if anyone's saying we can't afford to keep him, quite frankly, I would say, if anything, we can't afford to lose him because of the importance that he is to this team and just to the organization, what he's brought on the court. He's raised the ceiling of the team massively. And I think Dennis Schroeder would be such a massive value to be able to have behind a Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham, and for him to be able to actually have a home a place he can call home for a bit, I think is something he would probably not be opposed to either. Remember, he came in and said, man, this locker room's great. This is like the most together group I've seen since my his rookie year in Atlanta.
Yeah, and it was more than just him that mentioned that. That was kind of a league-wide known fact that the Detroit Pistons locker room was among the best. I mean, you hear it from former players that are talking about the kind of culture that has been built here and players that have never even been associated with the Pistons. So the word's getting out from the locker room, and it's becoming one of those kind of standout points where people are going to want to play here. In the past, Detroit has struck out time after time after time before the short king Isaiah Thomas became the kind of fourth quarter king. He was once rumored to come to Detroit. Did he sign here? Nope. I mean, we were hoping for those kind of signings, and it just never really materialized. But when we have this roster with what they've shown, and with JB, a coach you want to play for, and especially a coach that can bring out the best in any player, because he put Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr. in situations that had them strive, but also like excel even past what they have been known to do.
Yeah, he, the quote that really stuck out to me last night from JB's press conference was, just talking about the pride that he had in the season. There were two of them. The first one was, the thing that he stated how proud he was the group's ability to reinvigorate and revive an entire fan base in a franchise. Like, I know that's not something that they put up banners for, but I promise you that is just as valuable as any finals appearance, as any championship is bringing back hope to a franchise. Like, that is something that, in my opinion, shouldn't be underestimated, especially when you look at just the environment that was the LCA throughout these playoffs. Like, yeah, Detroit couldn't get it done. They couldn't get a win after these, after those 3 games. Some of that, not entirely their fault, but that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. But the one thing we do know is you saw Detroit show out, and you saw remnants of those old Palace crowds from back in the early to late 2000s.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, it is on the similar level to championships, conference finals, and you have to get there somehow. You can't just start at just the baseline level. This Pistons team, though, it might be due for a regression. And I think that's very obvious to say, because the jump they had, is it sustainable? We'd all like to say yes, but we've seen time and time again a team overachieve and then kind of drop the ball because maybe they were playing it patient. And regression isn't always bad, because it's not possible to always continue going up. So what would be a positive form of regression for you from this Pistons team that we could see next year? Like, does that make sense to you?
I mean, yeah, it makes sense. I definitely think I would expect that Malik's probably not going to have that same level of a shooting season. Yeah. I think it's just hard to expect anyone to have one of the highest volume shooting shooting seasons in the history of the league, just over and over again, unless you're a Steph Curry or unless you're a Klay Thompson. But I think that's where you would rely on some of your some of your young guys to step in. I think kind of like to your point, what are the tolerable regressions would be, like any of those veteran players where their roles are not what they have been, because young guys have been stepping in and taking those reins, so to speak. So like if if Malik Beasley was making like 60 or 70 less threes on the season, but like Ron Holland made 40 more and Asar started making more, then like that makes up for it in itself, right? So like I think with you almost have to anticipate there's going to be some form of regression from certain veterans as time goes on, right? But you have to make the bet that you're going to be able to supplement that with your young talent or with potential moves later on, right? So I think for me, when you talk about like two interesting case studies of like the positive and the negative of where this Pistons team could go, the positive is the Pacers, where they took this young dynamic guard, surrounded him with these young and scrappy like players, but also good shooters, spacers, And they went and they cashed in and were able to go get a Pascal Siakam. And not only did that elevate that team, but it brought them to the conference finals. They just beat the Bucks 2 years in a row in the first round. Like they are inherently, because of that move, always going to be one of the final 2 to final 4 teams in the East for years to come, right? That's a team that stepped up. The negative case to me is the Sacramento Kings, where they were the best story in the league a few years ago. But correct me if I'm wrong, Leggy, weren't they like the 2nd seed in the Western Conference? Like they were one of, if not the best. Yeah, they were top 3, top 4 in the Western Conference. Lost to the Warriors in the first round. Everyone was like, oh, well, that's okay because they'll be back next year. And they weren't back next year. And then they went and fired Mike Brown in the middle of this year after Jaden Ivey took that dagger shot. And then they traded De'Aaron Fox because they tried to make moves. They tried, but they weren't aggressive enough. They sat on their hands for too long. So for me, the reason why I'm more inclined to think that this could be like a Pacers situation than it could be a Kings situation is because Cade Cunningham still has room to grow in his game, whereas De'Aaron Fox is already in the midst of his prime. On top of that, you have a front office that has a proven track record of drafting well, supplementing players, and I think has more of a vision than Monty McNair ever did for the Sacramento Kings. I think that team being one of the best offensive teams in the regular season we've ever seen is absolute fool's gold, and that's been proven. So I think there's reasons to think Detroit could be like that Pacers example. But again, they're going to have to make those right moves, and that's the tricky, fickle balance of this all is if you wait too long, you could watch it pass you by.
Yeah.
If you go in too soon, you could just really set a ceiling. And what other example do we need of that than the team that we just made the first round a living hell for? Here's an antidote from last night, Leggy. I was walking down last night after the game. I go down the elevator to the event level where you go to the press conference. And as you walk down and get off the elevator, the first thing you pass by is the away locker room area.
Oh, man.
Leggy, I kid you not. And I get it's an accomplishment to win a playoff series, so I don't want to minimize that. It sounded like they just booked a trip to the finals.
Yeah.
Like they were hollering. They were ecstatic. Which, like, don't get me wrong. That was a big moment. And you should be able to celebrate in professional sports. That's what I'm not saying. But if you're the Knicks, you gotta be a little embarrassed that it took that much to beat a Pistons team without 2 of their best players.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, they were playing Paul Reed a lot of minutes. Ron Holland didn't play last night, but he played a lot in the series. So I noticed that the moment the game ended, like, yes, there was the big buzzer beater 3, or not buzzer beater, but the game winning 3 by Brunson. But they were hooting and hollering already on the court. And it's just a really interesting thing because where do they go from this? To get swept, maybe win a game against Boston, and then what do you do in the offseason? At this point, Thibodeau, I don't think, is safe. I don't think that style of basketball is really working with what they have because when you have that much talent, you kind of need something else to kind of get it to work.
I disagree from the sense that I think Thibodeau can, and again, I think this is a similar thing to JJ Redick, where you could have all these criticisms about their coaching decisions and things like that. And listen, I'm not saying these coaches are perfect. They're absolutely bound, they're absolutely open to be criticized. But Tom Thibodeau, we saw last night him draw up a really damn good play for Jalen Brunson to get that shot. That was that ghost screen from Mikal Bridges going across and Brunson going to his left and hitting that crazy crossover to go to his right. If that was what the drawn up play was, that was brilliant, right? Yeah. My thing is, there's only so much things that Tom Thibodeau could do with that roster when it's so inherently limited and has such an inherent ceiling on it. Like when you bring Karl Anthony Towns, yes, that offensive ceiling goes higher, but we all know what those defensive liabilities are. If you wanted to know what those defensive liabilities are, you know who you could have asked? Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah.
He coached them. He was his executive. I sound like I'm about to say Lamar Odom was on crack. His first move as the executive was to sign Lamar Odom, who was on crack.
You almost sound like you're right out of Rick and Morty. I don't even know how to explain it. Just that was the kind of vibe I was getting.
Morty, we gotta go talk basketball, Morty. Oh, jeez, Rick.
Oh, Sean, that was very, very quaint right there. If you guys can't tell, I'm very tired.
You prompted that.
I did.
You prompted that.
It's been a long day, Sean, but yeah, I agree with those points. This is what happens
when I don't get home till like 3 a.m.
That's very fair. I enjoy it. You're kind of given the life here. I feel like if it was just me recording right now, I would just be monotone. I'd be like this, saying, "Man, the Pistons. Oh, what a great season for them. They did so good, and I'm so happy."
Like Eeyore, the basketball podcast. Like the Pistons lost.
Do you watch Impractical Jokers?
Oh yeah.
Have you seen the episode where Joe has
rough year to be an Impractical Jokers fan, by the way.
What was that?
Rough year to be an Impractical
Jokers there's
fan.
A lot going on. I'm talking about the past, man. But remember that episode where Joe had the punishment where he had to wake up at like 2 a.m. and do the Australian podcast live show?
Oh gosh, no, I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, because he woke up and he had to eat like a mincemeat pie, and then he had to talk about the traffic and things going on and the weather, and it was good day, mates. Anyways, that's kind of how I would feel. So it's sad that you don't know that, because that was a wasted conversation on my part. Anyways,
I know so many other Impractical Jokers segments too. That's what sucks. Is like you just somehow found the one I don't know. I'm sorry.
So let's just say, okay, let's do this real quick. Let's put the 4 Pistons to the 4 Jokers.
Oh gosh.
So
I don't know if we want to be. I don't know if any Pistons player wants to be associated with any of the Impractical Jokers right now. I do not know if this is the best idea. If we are verbalizing this and thinking about it out loud, do we think this is the move?
Well, can I just say that there's nothing
Having
scripted
said that,
right now.
Burr.
Oh God. Oh no, man. Anyways, sorry, I just hacked up a lung on the microphone. So if anybody is like grossed out by that, whatever. Okay, what were we even talking about, Sean?
To the 4 people that are watching right now, you're getting a show tonight.
To the 4 people, the 8 eyeballs in here.
Hey,
thank you.
Those 8. Let's not assume. There are some 1 eyeball people out there.
We could have a Captain Hook. Wait, he has 2 eyeballs. He just has 1 hand. Okay. Anyways, Sean, let's.
Wait, an eye patch.
Does he?
I mean,
Captain Hook.
Some
Peter Pan. Okay.
Yeah.
Sean, how long have we been just shitting the bed in this? Okay. If anybody is still in here, live or afterwards, Sean, let's pivot.
All right, let's pivot. I do want to talk. I guess I got to take my little session to gloat about our first round predictions. Do a little check-in, an update here on all of our first round predictions. The only one that I have gotten wrong thus far, I believe, is going to be Houston losing to Golden State. Although Houston's up 46-40 right now. Can you imagine if the Warriors blow another 3-1 lead? The memes that would happen.
Well, yeah,
especially to Houston,
really
a team that hates Golden State.
That would be their Super Bowl. That would that would be like the Jordan getting past the Pistons.
Yeah, I think they would actually consider putting a banner up for that. I'm not even kidding. I think they would want to. I think the fans would petition for it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. But and the funny thing is, and we have a comment from Jeff Peak. Must be related to me. Same last name. Sean is gold, just saying. So Sean, you're getting some credit there.
Don't make me blush, Jeff. Don't make me blush.
Anyways, yeah, me and Brennan both had the Warriors winning this series, so it doesn't change shit no matter what happens here. So it's either going to be me or Brennan.
It doesn't because I had the Pacers winning. I had the Wolves winning, which I think if there's anything we can learn from those two series, and the reason why I felt as confident about the Pacers one in particular is because I think a lot of times, especially, you know what it really is? I think the LeBron 07 run really tricked a lot of people because we saw LeBron just take these really miserable teams and carry them through the East to the finals for literally a decade. But the reality of it is the Eastern Conference, like no conference is that weak anymore.
Yeah.
No team is that like inferior. And with the way the league is currently structured, you need cap space. Like and like you need good role players. You need a competent roster. And like Indiana, if you watch them play Milwaukee, or if you've watched those two teams play over the last couple of months, it is not even the same stratosphere.
Yeah.
Not even the same stratosphere. And if Gary Trent Jr. didn't turn into freaking Steph Curry for like a random couple of nights, the series wouldn't even gone that long. And then Minnesota, like, what did I say about that series? Yeah. The Lakers don't have a rim protector. And the Wolves have a ton of guys who are like 6'11" and 7'2".
Yeah, I listened to the recording, and I actually said the Minnesota Timberwolves. So, no, I didn't. I said the Lakers.
Believe me, I remember. You could try this gaslighting all you want.
Yeah, Sean, just go listen to it, man. Is it deleted? How did that happen? No, but yeah, it's either going to be me or Brennan who have to eat a handful of warheads right before we start streaming. So that's going to be a fun one. I hope I don't, because oh my gosh, my throat. I'm so sorry that Asara's myrrh just really threw me off the edge right there. And so now my throat is just ruined. But anyways, yeah, it's going to be fun if I have to do it. Actually, it's not going to be fun because then I have to do it. But
I mean, it's going to be fun for me.
Because I generally kind of like quote host. I start the show. That would be miserable. But just watching Brennan's face just kind of sit there through the intro, just going like something like this, that would be my Super Bowl.
See, I think we should do it at the beginning of the last segment. Like go through the whole show, still get good content out of it, but then that final segment, like make it like if it's like one of like your segments to lead, you have to lead that segment, but on Mad Warheads, and then you get because then you get your fill of what you come to 313 Connect for, which is the basketball content, but then you stay for the goofs and the laughs. You get to see that at the like that's like the finale.
I think that's the way to do it. It's funny though because
I think that's the move.
It's funny because No Dunks, that podcast, they do it all in person, all together in Atlanta, and they do pick'em games. And so when you lose, there was this one thing where they had to pretend to be like in movies. So one guy would be behind a bookshelf with an astronaut suit. I think it was about Interstellar, and just had to be like that guy for a whole week. One guy had to sit on the toilet on the podcast for the whole week. There was a lot of fart noise. Anyways, you know what? I think that's what we should pivot to. Brennan just has to sit on the toilet. Next 313 Connect. Can we pivot to some Pistons talk? I'm so sorry.
So, okay, here's one thing.
We went up to 6, and then I said something about just seeing Brennan on the toilet, instantly down to 5.
You know what? That's honestly, whoever's the person that dropped out, I kind of understand. No, I'm kidding. Here's what I'll say about this. I think one of the biggest things that's been talked about during the entire series and just, kind of over the last few weeks or so, I think we really started to see the impact of no Jaden Ivey. And, like a lot of people are talking about like, oh, we need to go and get a secondary shot creator, forgetting that we have a secondary shot creator at home who was playing really good basketball for the final month. And I also think if you look at the state of the injury, the nature of it, I think it's a type of injury that's you can really bounce back from.
Yeah.
So I do think that having that Jaden having a full summer to get back into shape, but also to play basketball again, to like kind of just like get his legs back under him and to come back full strength at the beginning of next season is going to be something that's really good for this team and for him personally, because I always thought that it was going to be ungodly unfair to put someone in that position of, oh, hey, welcome back. Not only is this your first basketball in 4 months, this is also your first ever playoff reps. Have fun.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. The Lakers did it with Maxi Kleba. He never even practiced as a Laker, and they threw him out for 5 minutes.
That is
in the Wolves
pointless.
game as if he was going to do anything. Oh,
yeah. Jaden Ivey has been a missed man, and it's to a point where you look at what Dennis Schroeder's doing, and you can't say that Jaden Ivey could easily fill that role, though, and he could fill similar kind of hypercharged role of what Schroeder's doing.
Well, Dennis Schroeder was filling the Jaden Ivey role. He was doing that throughout the season. Like, he already was that guy.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just the level of what Jaden Ivey could do is, because what was the second highest scorer for the Pistons in this series? Do you know who that was?
I think it was, off the top of my head, I think it was Tim or Tobias.
Yeah, it was Tobias. Can you put a number on it?
Like points per game or total?
Yeah, let's just say points per game.
If I had to put a number to it, I'd probably say 15 points a game, 14 points a game.
15.7, so you were basically right on the money there. And it's a thing
Tobias
where
Harris, like, he is like, if you were to like just take a picture of 15 points a game, you would just have Tobias smile. I mean, and that's not an insult. That's just his consistency.
It's exactly. He's Mr. 15 points. So it's a thing where the Pistons did this in a series where their second highest scorer averaged 15. Cade averaged 25, had to carry a lot of that weight there. And it's interesting to see how Cade is adapting and how he adapted to this series, because throughout a lot of the season, we saw a lot of those Cade 30 points. We saw a lot of those Cade's 40 points. But I think when his most impactful basketball was played when he was putting up those high assist numbers and being a facilitator, because that means everyone else is hot. He averaged 8.7 assists, and Beasley, Tim Hardaway, I mean, Schroeder, honestly, the whole team was down from three. And that's kind of what happens in the playoffs. What would he be at in assists per game if Timmy, Malik, I mean, heck, even Jalen Duren on the inside was able to get a little bit more of those?
He would at least be averaging a double-double.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even then, the fact that he was already averaging that many, I mean, to continue to put in perspective, the only players to ever average 25, 8, and 8 in their first 5 playoff games are Cade Cunningham, Luka Doncic, Oscar Robertson. So to all the people who are like, oh, well, we could have gotten more from Cade this series. What the are you talking about? Like, what more could you possibly ask for? Yes, you need to make those shots down the stretch, but like, we've seen all the legendary players have to go through those bumps and learn all those lessons. Like Jalen Brunson, he's been in these high pressure situations since he was in college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get the point, but it also is one of those things where I feel like with Cade in these playoffs, we have seen a little bit of regression and some things that we thought were a little bit more stable. 3-point, obviously the 3-point numbers do go down. And I do think the interior finishing and kind of just getting to the rim, obviously you're also looking at who he's going up against. So there's the mind or the heart wants me to talk about Cade and be like, like he probably could have done better, but the mind is kind of giving me those, well, you have to talk about who he's going against, the situation that it's his first playoffs, and I don't expect him to go out there and be Jesus Christ. I mean, you have to have realistic expectations.
The only area where I feel like I can concede and say Cade needs to do better in the playoffs is his 3-point shooting. He averaged 17% from 3 in the series. But everything else, defensively, his scoring, his facilitating, obviously the turnovers in general are just a thing that Cade needs to work on. But when you have the ball in your hands that much and and the load, especially without an Ivy, especially without a Stewart, when the load is that high for you to go out and produce and to perform, that's a really high burden to put on someone, especially a 23-year-old franchise player who is in his first playoff series, who's primarily getting guarded by OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
Like, that's the other thing. He's doing all of this, by the way, by going up against some of the most highly respected, highly touted wing defenders we have in the game.
Yep, because OG Anunoby's kind of like that force, and it's a lot more of his power and strength, where Mikal is the length, and they keep switching up, and Cade was able to get to the rim, able to have those fadeaways. I mean, he still averaged 25, and I think that's a really important point. There is a few games in the series where if he hits 1 3, 2 threes, Pistons win the series.
And even then, he still had one of the best playoff runs for a 23-year-old in the history of the sport.
See, that's kind of where it's interesting to me, because that's where the stats are so important, because who were the teammates that Luka and Oscar Robertson had with those runs, the 25, 8, and 8s in those first 5 playoff games? Because can I just say that the Pistons probably have the worst roster out of all of them? Just guessing? I mean,
yeah.
And that's not talking down upon our team, but it's such a small sample size that we're comparing it to.
Well, we know Luka. He didn't make the playoffs his first season, but they immediately went and traded for Kristaps Porzingis, who, with all due respect to anyone on the Pistons right now, is a better weapon than any of those guys had. And Oscar Robertson is one of the greatest of all time. But if we're being objective, it was also a completely different league with way less talent. So for Cade to be able to do that in 2025 is something in itself that I just think is, not to make it all about stats, but it also it paints the picture of like he was still that good, and it's like, does he need to be better? Yes, but you know who else needs to be better in the playoffs? Every single 23-year-old franchise star who's just finished his first series.
Yeah,
like, he just got there.
And I said, if Cade makes 1 or 2 more in a couple of these games, they win. You could say the same about Malik Beasley. You could say the same thing about Tim Hardaway Jr. You can talk about JB and what he's done. You can I don't recommend nitpicking what Trajan Langdon has done, but there's probably an angle you could look at and say, well, if he just did this, we could have won in the first round. It's so useless to talk about the ifs and the ands, because any team has that. The Knicks could also say, well, if things go our way in a couple of these, we win 4-0.
And I also just I hate the blame game conversation for this particular topic in this particular series, because I think we're just so used to needing someone to blame because of the 28 game losing streak, because of the historic losing that we've had over the years. It's important to remember and not keep sight of the fact that we just had a 30 game win jump, won our first playoff games in 17 years, had our first playoff game in May in 17 years, and people still want to complain?
Yeah.
JB Bickerstaff in one season literally revitalized the entire culture. Cade Cunningham almost got choked up in his post-game press conference because he talked about how much JB's had an impact on him and on this team, and people still want to complain? I get they want to see Asar in the lineup more. Absolutely, I do too. But also, we need to be honest. As great as Asar is, he's probably the best at his particular skill anyone is at anything on the team.
Yeah.
But he also has one of the most glaring weaknesses in his game on any one of the team. And it's the fact that he can't space the floor. And when you have a Cade Cunningham needs to operate in space, that's a contradiction.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I agree to an extent, because I think when you're talking about JB, it is important to point out things that people do see as quote flaws or mistakes, because you can't just say, oh, JB is all flowers and roses. I mean, even though he did what he did, it's totally fair to point it out. But I think we're on the same page to where I don't think people should be saying, oh, classic JB, he's already back to his Cavs days. Like, this is who he's always been. He's just a bridge coach. I don't agree with any of that talk, because I saw hundreds of people. I don't even know if it was hundreds, but it was a lot of people calling him just a bridge coach. People have been posting it over anything that has to do with the Pistons, anything that has to do with the coaching, anything that has to do with, honestly, NBA posts. You see it everywhere. He's done an amazing job.
And he did so bad in Cleveland that all of his years, but his last one, he improved on their record.
Exactly.
And even in the last one, he missed his key players for 25 plus games and was only eliminated by the Boston Celtics. So
yeah,
I definitely agree that like you can look at and I agree that it's fair to criticize, or like it's fair you can question decisions that were made, but at the same time, to me, it almost gets to the point of like I think the way some people do it, it's like planting the seed of starting to put someone on the hot seat. And it's like, why do we always have to push? Like, why is the coach always the first conversation, always the first thing? We've seen over and over again just teams fire and discard their coach like it's nothing, when again, most of the time it is something that has to be addressed and executed upon by the front office. Here, I think it's a team that was really good but reached an inherent ceiling, and if things went a different way, could have won that series. But I think ultimately the team that was the better team probably still won. And, you know, I think although like there was like the missed call and there were some things that definitely were, just flat out suspect and should have gone the other direction. I mean, nobody was playing better in clutch this series than Jalen Brunson. Nobody was making bigger shots than him or Cat. That's just the truth.
People trying to discredit the Knicks as well. At first, at the beginning of this series, it was obvious what Jalen Brunson was trying to do and how he was trying to get those points at the end of the games. As the series went on, I feel like he kind of maybe heard the narrative and just said, you know what, I'm just going to make these big shots. From floaters to inside scoops to that Asar Thompson pretty much broke him down right there and got that basically game-winning three. So big respect to him. Big respect to Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, who knew their role on offense this entire time, made big three game after game. Karl Anthony Towns pulling up at the end of shot clocks game after game. I'm not going to say they're going to beat the Celtics, but I do want to say if they stay healthy, they have a good chance to win a couple games and maybe scare Boston because just of the big shot making. Also, I do want to say Boston has the weapons in the arsenal to kind of combat the offense that the New York Knicks have.
Yeah. I mean, my one concern is, it's like if they can stay healthy, I wonder how healthy they even are going into this series. Like a Brunson in particular, with just how much of a load. And, granted, he looked pretty dang good when he had that stutter step against Asar, but at the same time, we've just seen how many more times can he just violently turn his ankle like that? You know what I mean? It just feels like it happened like 4 times. It happened like once per game, except the last game.
Yeah. Yeah. When is the one time when then he is out?
Right. What's the one time too many? I do think that I think it's like similar to why Pistons fans are like, hey, look at the regular season series. Like, this is a tough series for the Knicks. It's like, well, if you look at the regular season series, the Knicks never beat any of these top teams. So I think, like, even though I think the Knicks certainly can take a couple games off of the Celtics, I also think that you would have to be concerned about the lack of consistency the Knicks played with, because there were just times where it just felt like they were playing with their food. Like in the first quarter of Game 6, it felt like it was going to be an absolute blowout, that it was not even going to be a conversation. It felt like the Knicks were finally putting their stamp on this series and showing why they went and made the moves they made this offseason. But then their offense just fell apart. Yeah. They just, for like 2 quarters, forgot what they were doing. And it took like Jalen Brunson heroics to get the hell out of LCA with that win.
Yeah. I mean,
they escaped 2 of those wins flat out.
Could you say 3? If you're talking about the over and back?
You most certainly could.
I mean,
the NBA will say one of them was okay and was right. I think Jalen Brunson's face when he put the ball down going into the backcourt would say otherwise. But
I didn't see that. I saw the clip. I didn't see his reaction.
I mean, like he was like he knew very quickly, like when he was like going to the backcourt, like he realized like you could clearly tell he thought he was doing a backcourt violation.
Yeah.
A lot of times I think when you look at like I think like if you want to look at like the true serum of like how sketchy those are, look at the players that got away with it. Look at their reaction in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because Josh Hart, I don't think had much of a reaction after fouling Tim Hardaway Jr., but in the post game, he definitely said, yeah, there was contact. Yep.
Yeah.
100% contact. So,
which in fairness to them, I don't even know what else he's saying in that moment. It's like, well, yeah, there's contact, but it happened.
Yeah,
it's not like they could just be like, yeah, you know what, you're right. Let's go back out on the court. Let's let those guys shoot free throws so we can lose this series. Like, no, they're competitors. Yeah. They didn't get called. Awesome. Let's leave. Get the hell out of here.
Sean, we're about 45 minutes in. 7 people here right now. Thank you all who are joining so far. Talking about kind of what the Pistons need to remember from this season going into next year, because there were a lot of themes that we saw. I just want to kind of talk about what are some of the most important moments from this season that kind of define it and how those can kind of carry into the future. And the number one for me is the amount of clutch baskets that we saw, because game after game, we saw game winners, we saw game-winning blocks, we saw go-ahead buckets, we saw clutch time, we saw overtime a few times. Mm-hmm. Cade Cunningham with the block on Okongwu to beat the Atlanta Hawks was fantastic. Jaden Ivey, the 2 game-winning shots he had this year. Imagine if we still had him, and that's a whole different conversation. We might not have been as lucky with our record, because I think we did see a new Cade Cunningham, but I think it still would have been a solid ending to the season with him. But I digress on that point. What are some kind of those key moments for you?
Yeah, I think of the Jaden Ivey game winner in Sacramento. I think of the Cade bucket and block. I think of the Jalen Duren lob, followed by the Spoelstra timeout. I think of the Minnesota tussle, even though there was the drama and the fallout of all that. I think that was a real culture moment for them of showcasing exactly who they were and that they're not going to be pushed around by anybody in that light. I think the biggest thing that they have to remember from this season, if they want to continue to build upon it, is the thing that drove them at the beginning of this season to begin with. Like, I think even though this season was a massive success and there's a lot of accomplishment to take away from it, I think it's important to remember and not take for granted, not being in those lows, like remembering what the dog days of that losing streak is. There was a legendary reporter in the press conference room last night. I'm embarrassed because I'm blanking on his name, because he was from the Detroit Free Press. He literally, like, those front page papers, I'm pretty sure he was literally the writer on those. I have it on my back wall too, of the Not Bad Boys. Like, he kind of inferred of, like, a lot of the great teams, they take this pain and they utilize it. They build upon it. They harness it. I think that Jalen Brunson shot, followed by the deflection, like, if we want to see the Pistons build upon what they did this season, I think they have to internalize that, and they have to learn, like, what it takes to get better in those moments. And I think if I'm a Cade Cunningham, I think you learn what the difference is between a great rising young player and an established elite playoff performer. Because we can say whatever we want about Jalen Brunson. You can have whatever opinion you want on his tactics, on the way that he plays the game. One thing that cannot be disputed is that the only other player in the history of the playoffs that has his clutch stats is Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
Yeah.
It's Michael Jordan, Jalen Brunson. End of list.
Yeah, the Pistons can take a lot from this, and
he has more 30-point playoff games, by the way, than Magic Johnson.
Jalen Brunson's a dog.
No.
I really like your point talking about, I mean, he has his tactics. Everyone knows what he does. Everyone knows the flaws with that. Everyone knows the controversy. Mm-hmm. He's going to hit the big shots. That's just what he does.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Like, you can say whatever you want. I haven't stopped it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Sean, I think the biggest thing for me as well, and you kind of mentioned it, is kind of let yourself fester in what happened. I kind of want them to keep the identity of, especially the players who were there for the 14-win season, because they were able to see that leap, and that fire had to have contributed to this. Let's say last year they win, I don't know, like 25 games. They still end up firing their coaching staff. They still end up changing out the front office. Everything at the beginning of the season is the same as it is now, except you're coming in with 25 wins instead of 14.
I don't even know if you fire Monty if they win 25 games. Well, by the way,
huge hypothetical here, but let's just say it is. And Sean, I don't even want to talk about Monty, so I just quickly got that point out of here. It's out. But anyways, when you're talking about what they probably would have done this year, I don't think they're hitting that 44 win mark because they kind of don't have the drive.
To jump up, but yeah. I definitely think there. I think there is a certain taste in your mouth aspect to the losing streak and the way that things ended, but at the same time, like, I'm almost kind of surprised that, like, when they started losing at the beginning of this season, because they started out, 0-4, 0-5 at the beginning of the year. I'm surprised, and I think that's where you saw, like, the veterans really take step. Like, that could have paralyzed this team. That could have sent them back down another spiral, because that trauma could have kicked in. Like, and it almost kind of felt like you saw that collective trauma on the court when they would play. Like, they would shrivel up in the fourth quarter, like, and I just think, and honestly, I think you kind of saw some of those, like, habits and some of those things come back in the in the playoffs. What's the moment that actually should really stick with this team, by the way, Leggy? I think the moment that was the most unlike the Pistons in this entire playoffs, and it was perhaps the loudest I heard the arena against Detroit in the playoffs, which was when they missed that easy defensive rebound and allowed Brunson to grab it and get a layup.
Yeah.
You remember that towards the end of the game? Mm-hmm. It was like a very gettable defensive board, and the Knicks turned it into second chance points. So they didn't even box out. They didn't even, like, try to, like, fight a box out. Like, they just snuck in and grabbed it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like those moments where it's like, you can't just wait for the ball to come to you, especially in the postseason. You have to take it. Just like a series, you have to take it. You can't rely on officiating or, all these different things. You have to go out and you have to make it not even a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
And you can, and I think both things can be true of, they need to be better, but damn if they didn't just have an incredible year.
Yeah, 100%. Like, we could be, and I can say we did have negative points on this video, and Brennan and I yesterday on the live stream also had negative points. But we're very proud of this team, and I hope that is able to be conveyed here, because they did something not many people thought they could. And just the fact that the season went this way and we're able to have these discussions talking about how disappointing a playoff loss is, I would take that 100 out of 100 times if we're talking about what I wanted from this year.
Yeah, and again, that series was just so insanely competitive. I think you couldn't have asked more from that element. The Pistons, I think that, did they even lose? Like, I think they lost by was 6.
Yeah, no double digits.
Yeah, not even getting close to losing by double digits either. Every single one came down to a teachable moment in the final moments. And what was the thing that we were saying leading up to the playoffs? This is great evaluation time. And I think we got a very clear sense of where each player is and where they need to grow. I think you saw certain players grow throughout the series. Like, Jalen Duren looked like a grown man in game 6 compared to game 1.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the development game by game. Jalen Duren game 6, though, pretty early, was a little rough. It kind of took him a little bit to get right into it.
The whole team was.
Yeah, that's very fair. But
the whole team was.
It's just those things where, I mean, overall grand scheme of things, though, you are right. These players did have developments, and I don't remember if it was with you or with Brennan talking about Asar Thompson and the defense on Brunson that kind of kept going forward and lessening the amount of hands-on, easy fouls that Brunson was able to kind of manipulate. Seeing that growth, and obviously we know what the last play was in that dagger 3, but overall, that's going to only help him going into next year and help him take these matchups, because even in his first games, he was absolutely locking down star players. LaMelo Ball, what a headliner to start with when I say star players, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Donovan Mitchell's of the world. He was able to limit what they did, and I'm really excited to see in the next playoff series what that looks like.
Did you see what Jalen Brunson had to say about Asar Thompson and the Pistons after this game, after this series?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact quotes, but he was very impressed.
He said about Asar, that dude was tough to play against. He's big time. And I told him straight to his face after the series, he made me work. I've got a lot of respect for him. And if you watched, he made him work. Yeah. Like Brunson, he might have still gone out and put out the output that he does, but he had to sweat for it, man. And then the other thing that he said about the Pistons, like, to me, like, this is like as much of a compliment as you can give a team. And Ryan Field posted this, so I want to make sure I pull it up and get the exact quote. But he said, they're not an up and coming team. They're here.
Yeah.
And if you need any endorsement, that's it right there, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is a series where you're right. I mean, that is the exact embodiment of what this series was for Detroit. And that kind of leads to what we were talking about earlier when talking about what do they need to do next year. And they're there, and other players are going to see that. And other players and agents are going to want to go to this situation because they saw what it can do. But, Sean, we're going to have a lot more time, especially looking at the 313 Connect, to discuss the offseason and discuss what the Pistons actually are going to do. Right now, there's so much speculation, and it's one day after the playoffs. What I'm happy about is that these conversations didn't really start a month and a half ago, where teams who are eliminated from the playoffs are already deep into talking about what their teams can do. So I'm really excited to kind of pivot into that direction. Obviously, I wish we were still playing playoff basketball, but it's always fun to talk about the kind of ifs, ands, buts, kind of speculating contracts, all of those little things.
I mean, the NBA, it's such a fascinating sport because the beginning of the off season is almost as fun as the beginning of the playoffs, because you have all this maneuver, you have all this maneuvering, you have all this mobility, you have players and teams doing things that we have no conception of even being a possibility. Like, there's a real possibility we don't even actually know the true destination of where Giannis will end up. There's a real possibility we don't even know what will happen with the Lakers or all these other teams. Did you see the rumors that the Celtics might have to start breaking up this team this summer?
Yeah, Brendan and I talked a lot about that yesterday. That's just crazy to think about.
I'm just saying, man. Kristaps Porzingis, I get the risks.
Yeah.
But man, when he is on, and as he's gotten healthier, as time's gotten on, he is awesome.
Yeah, Brendan talked a lot about that fit here.
Yeah.
Did I say Brendan? I meant Brennan. My brain is fried. But yeah, Kristaps on this team would be a beautiful fit. And like you said, there are the risks. But at some point, especially when the contracts aren't 4 or 5 years, max deals, I feel like you have to take some swings there.
Well, I'm just saying. I know this might seem kind of out of left field. I asked. I talked to Jamel McMillan at the beginning of the season, the head coach of the Motor City Cruise. I had him on. Did a segment with him on From Half Court, and one of the questions I asked him was if you could just fill your team of one of any player, or like if you're showing film to someone and saying, hey, this is the game that you should replicate. This is the person you should aspire to be. Who should that be? Without even hesitation, you know who he said? Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, Drew Holiday in Detroit, I wouldn't hate that either.
That fits. I feel like because he's getting older every single year, it's just going. I mean, obviously, people are getting older every single year, but
that is how life works.
But with his play style, I feel like that can age, and I feel like once you do, you can easily hit a wall, especially with the lateral quickness. But he doesn't look like he's slowing down quite yet.
Well, and could you imagine throwing Drew Holiday and Asar Thompson on the court together defensively, and then sprinkle in some Ron Holland?
Need it. One thing we talked about yesterday as well is like when you're talking about a potential Kristaps trade or anyone else on the Celtics is what do you have to give of that could be of high value that they could actually utilize and that they could see as a fair fit, unless it's literally cap relief. But I feel like they're at a stage where is that really the priority? But new ownership, that is easily could be a mandate.
Yeah, they would need cap relief. They would want picks. And if they did want young prospects, they would want them towards or at the beginning of their rookie contracts, because as much as it would be great for them to bring in like an Asar Thompson, you don't think he's going to get a bag when his extension's up? You don't think that just puts them right back to the problem that they were in? You know what I mean? So it almost have to be like if they were to trade for you'd probably have to think about like a Ron Holland. You'd probably have to think about a pick. And then you would more than likely throw in like some form of salary filler to make the trade work, But like they would probably also look at guys. They would probably, honestly, guys like Boston would probably look at guys like Bobby Klintman, where they can like take a swing on like a young prospect on a cheap deal who has shown some tendencies to be like a 3-and-D wing and has some professional experience overseas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would hate that. I love Bobby Klintman so much, and I do feel like he can instantly come in next year and kind of fill a role, especially take some of those Simone Fontecchio minutes. Tobias is getting older, fill into there. But this is the same conversation. How much do you need to stay stagnant versus how much do you just need to actually go in and put someone next to Cade Cunningham? Because if we roll into the playoffs next year and our second best scorer is, I guess, Jaden Ivey potentially, I don't know if that's necessarily a recipe for success.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's going to be a lot of scenarios on the table, I think, as the coming months come. I think to me the thing I'm just looking forward to the most of exit interviews is just hearing Trajan's perspective on how, if at all, this changes their approach going into the offseason and going into next year. Because, I mean, quite frankly, he said this is beyond his wildest expectations. And they already debated going out and making a trade. They said so at the deadline. So the fact that this group has already started to kind of really start to get them to question whether or not they should accelerate it, I think it says a lot about them. But again, if you're going to put themselves, if they're going to put themselves up there with the Indianas, with the New Yorks, with the Clevelands, with the Bostons, yeah, you gotta make pretty damn sure it's going to be the right move.
Yeah. Well, Sean, this was a great time.
Glad I had fun, man. I honestly it's always like the basketball conversation, super fun. I also just really enjoy the freedom and the moments just to be able to joke around and just not take this too seriously at all. I just really appreciate it. And yeah, man, that Murr joke is going to live rent free in my head for a while. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I'm going to clip that and instantly put that on Twitter. No, but for real though, like that's kind of the point of this basketball talk's fun, but I think the most fun is when you're enjoying it with a friend and you're able to shoot the shit and have those interesting conversations where to us it makes sense, but to a viewer, they're probably like, what the hell? But they're like, I need to hear this because what could that mean? But again, this was a great time. We're going to have a lot more time on the 3-and-3 Connect as it grows to continue talking about and figure out Sal Vulcano. Who is he on the Pistons? But in the meantime, Sean, what are you working on your own personal stuff?
Yeah, man. Now that the season's over, going to be doing some more collaboration with some people throughout the off season. Going to be having on Johnny Kane soon on From Half Court. So be sure you subscribe and go check that out. Going to be setting a date for that. actually going to be having someone a little bit more on the Grand Rapids side. His name's Big Drew. He actually did a show with Jim Costa called Big Drew and Jim. He's the in-arena host for the Grand Rapids Gold, so he'll be coming on here soon. Going to be trying to get some stuff with Pistons beat reporters now that the season's done, and just kind of, do some summer content. Also want to get Mike Curtis on the show this summer and talk about what the hell's going on in Dallas. So yeah, man, I honestly, like, even though it's the off season for me, this, like, I get reinvigorated in a sense of this allows us to do a little bit different content, allows us to get a little bit more creative. And, like, there's kind of ebbs and flows to it. Cause like when you get to the end of the off season, you're drained and you're ready for the regular season, because you want those things to talk about.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the season, it's like, oh man, I'm excited to do that all over again, because now your head's just filled with all these different possibilities and things that you're like, I'm going to save that for the off season.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, be sure you go check it out on From Half Court. You can follow me on at Sean Half Court for more content there as well. But yeah, also excited to just keep getting this show going and just keep doing the content together with the boys.
Yeah, the lives have been going great. Even the Leggy Sports lives have been going well. I mean, throughout this video, it was a consistent 6-7. We got up to the teens, and just a few minutes ago, it was at 9. So to everyone who's been here, honestly, the support means a lot. And just being here, watching means a lot. If you do like the content, make sure you like, subscribe, comment your thoughts. Check out some of the playlists as well, because we have all of our past 313 Connect. Oh, Pistons talk in the comments. Nico would trade Sean and Leggy for a bag of Skittles. Sean, you want to man a Pistons podcast with me? Or a Mavericks podcast? Want to go to Dallas?
Oh, baby, let's do it. What better fan base to jump on board with right now than the Dallas Mavericks, man?
They're in the
Things
dumps.
are on the up and up.
Yeah, I think you and me, Sean, next week, I'm going to change all these colors to Mavericks colors. Oh, my phone died, so my camera is gone. Well, this is where we're going to call it. It just about made it. So Pistons talk, if it wasn't for you, Anthony, we would be done and my camera would be fine. So, okay.
Anthony. On that note.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us. And like I said, appreciate all the support. Make sure you like, subscribe, check out some other content. Check out Sean's content. I'm going to make sure to put that all in the description. We will be back with more 313 Connect very soon. Talk to you later.